I knew something was wrong the moment the restaurant went quiet. My place never gets quiet. Deals happen here. Secrets move through the air like smoke, and nobody looks at anything for too long unless they want trouble. But that afternoon, every pair of eyes shifted toward the front doors. At first, I thought someone important had walked in. A rival, a threat, a problem. But it was a little girl. She walked across the marble floor like a shadow, like someone who had learned early that making noise got you hurt. Her uniform was wrinkled. Her shoes were too thin for the cold. Her hair was pulled back with a tie that looked ready to snap, and her hands clutched a folded paper the way some people held on to life. My bodyguard moved first, his hand going to his jacket. I stopped him with 2 fingers. I didn't know why. I just knew she wasn't danger. She was something else, something worse. She stopped 3 feet from my table. Even from that distance, I saw bruises on her wrist. Small, finger-shaped. The kind that make a man like me feel something heavy stir in his chest. Her voice shook when she spoke. "Can you walk me to school?" I've heard begging from grown men. I've heard lies, threats, bargains, and prayers. But nothing ever hit me the way those 6 words did. They were too soft for a room like mine. Too honest, too scared. I set down my knife. Didn't rush, didn't blink. I studied her the way I study anything that crosses my line. Slow, careful, looking for the trap. "Why?" I asked. She lifted the paper with both hands. They were trembling so badly she almost dropped it. When I took it from her, she flinched. The kind of flinch that tells you nobody ever reaches out gently in her world. It was a drawing. Crayon lines, fading and smudged. A little girl in the center. Bigger kids around her with angry faces, and a black car drawn in the corner. Her handwriting filled the top. "Please help," she whispered. "They push me every day. They say things. And there's a man in a black car who follows me. He knows where I live. Nobody listens when I tell them." She wasn't lying. I've looked into the eyes of liars my entire life. This was real fear. Clean, sharp, undeniable. But what I couldn't understand was why she came to me. Everyone in Wilmington knows who I am, what I am. Parents tell their kids stories about me to keep them from running into the street. Men who owe me money cross themselves when they hear my footsteps. So why me? Why come to a man like me? I asked quietly. She wiped her cheek with her sleeve. Her voice cracked. "Because everyone is scared of you." And I thought, if they're scared of you, then maybe they'll stop hurting me. There are moments that split a man's life into before and after. For me, it was that moment. That sentence. That truth spoken by a child who should have had protection long before she ever thought to come to someone like me. Before I could respond, the manager rushed over, ready to drag her away. I looked at him once. Just once. He turned around so fast he almost tripped. I leaned forward, lowering my voice. "What's your name?" "Aaliyah," she whispered. "And your mother?" "Saren. Saren Halden." A name I'd heard before. A nurse. Single mother. Working night shifts. No help. No protection. A woman the city overlooked because she didn't have money or friends in high places. When Aaliyah spoke again, her voice barely reached me. "I'm scared to go tomorrow. I can't sleep at night. My mom cries when she thinks I'm not looking." Something inside me tightened. I didn't plan for it, didn't invite it, but it came anyway. "Where do you live?" I asked. She told me. A building I knew, a neighborhood where the police respond only when it's already too late. I folded her drawing with care, real care, and stood. "Come with me," I said. Her eyes widened, not in fear, but in something worse. Hope. My driver took her home. I watched from my office window as the car disappeared into traffic. The city lights reflected off the river below, bright and cold. I had seen this city break strong men, crush families, devour children who didn't have someone willing to fight for them. But this time the city picked the wrong child, because she asked me. A 7-year-old girl walked into my world, stood in front of the most dangerous man in Wilmington, and asked for protection like it was something she deserved. And for the first time in a long time, I agreed with someone. Tomorrow morning at 8 o'clock, I would walk her to school, not because I should, but because someone needed to be scared. And it sure as hell wasn't going to be her. I barely slept that night. Not because of danger, not because of business, but because of a drawing done in crayon that sat on my desk like a silent accusation. A little girl had more courage than half the men who walked through my doors. She came to me because the people who were supposed to protect her didn't care enough to try. At 7:30 the next morning, I was already parked outside her building. It wasn't a place meant for children. Too many broken blinds, too many cold stairwells, too many people pretending not to hear things through thin walls. My partner, Cole, sat beside me. He didn't ask questions. He knew better. A few minutes later, Siren opened the apartment door. She looked like she hadn't slept in weeks. Her scrubs hung loose on her tired frame. Her hands shook when she pushed the hair back from her face. I saw the fear in her eyes long before she spoke. "Mr. Calvet, I can't pay you," she whispered. "I don't know what my daughter asked you for, but I don't have anything to give you." I shook my head. "I'm not here for money," I said. "Your daughter asked me to walk her to school. That's what I'm doing." The relief in her face didn't come with trust. It came with confusion, fear, and something deeper. A mother trying to understand why a man like me was standing at her door without asking for something in return. Then Aaliyah stepped forward. Her backpack looked almost bigger than she was. She held it against her chest like a shield. But when she saw me, she smiled. A small smile. A hopeful one. Something so simple it hit me harder than any bullet ever did. "Are you still coming?" she asked. "I said I would," I answered. Her hand found mine without hesitation. We walked out of that building together. The ride to Riverside Elementary was quiet. She sat in the back seat, staring out the window, her reflection small against the glass. Every so often she looked up at me through the mirror, just to make sure I was still there. When the school finally came into view, I could feel the entire morning shift, as if the air itself paused. Parents stepped out of cars and froze. Teachers stopped mid-sentence. Even children noticed the change without understanding why. I stepped out first, then opened the door for her. She climbed down slowly, gripping my fingers with surprising strength. She took a deep breath. Then we walked. Every head turned. A few parents whispered my name. Some pulled their kids closer. A crossing guard dropped her sign. I didn't care. Their fear wasn't the point today. Aaliyah was. We hadn't reached the entrance before I spotted him, the boy she'd drawn, taller than the others. Surrounded by kids who followed him the way animals follow someone who feeds them cruelty. His smirk formed when he saw her. Then he saw me. The smirk died instantly. He stumbled backward and knocked into one of his friends, who nearly fell over trying to get out of his way. These kids, so brave with an unprotected girl, looked at me like they'd just seen the ocean pull back before a storm. I didn't glare. I didn't threaten. I simply looked, and that was enough. A teacher hurried forward, her face pale. "Mr. Calvet, is everything all right?" she asked, though her voice made it clear she already knew the answer. "No," I said. "Everything has not been all right for a long time." The principal rushed out next, adjusting his tie as if that could fix the situation. "Good morning," he greeted, smiling too wide. "We weren't expecting." I handed him a manila envelope thick with every document he had ignored. "These are the reports you overlooked," I said. "And this," I pointed to Aaliyah, "is the child you failed to protect." His face drained of color. "She will not be touched again. She will not be followed. She will not be spoken to in any way that causes her fear. If she is, I will handle it myself." He swallowed hard. "Yes, sir," he whispered. I wasn't his boss. I wasn't part of the school board. But when fear speaks with clarity, people listen. Aaliyah squeezed my hand once more. "Thank you," she whispered. I crouched so I could look her in the eyes. "You don't thank me for doing what should have been done for you already. You walk through those doors with your head up. No one here decides who you get to be. You do." She nodded. Then she did something that caught me completely off guard. She hugged me, a small set of arms around my neck. Warm, trembling, fast heartbeat against mine. It lasted only a second, but I felt it long after she walked toward the school entrance. I stood up slowly, watching her go, watching her new steps. Lighter, braver, her shadow no longer dragging behind her. Parents stared at me. Teachers avoided eye contact. The principal held the envelope like a bomb that could go off at any second. But Aaliyah didn't look back in fear. She looked back only once to smile. And that was when I realized something I hadn't expected. I wasn't doing this because I felt responsible. I was doing this because I cared. Deeply. Dangerously. And that meant things were about to change far more than any of them understood. For the next 3 days, I watched the city move in ways it never had before. Not because the streets changed, but because I changed. I found myself looking for the black Dodge Charger on every corner. I found myself thinking about Aaliyah's small hand in mine, and the way she checked the rearview mirror just to make sure nobody followed her. I found myself thinking about Niran, her tired eyes, her steady voice, her fear hidden under layers of strength. I'd spent my life protecting people who paid me. People who made deals, called in favors, begged for safety. But this was different. Protecting a 7-year-old girl didn't feel like business. It felt like purpose. On the 4th afternoon, Niran walked into my restaurant. Not dressed up, not pretending to belong. Just a mother with shaking hands and a heart full of something she didn't know how to say. She took one step inside before pausing, unsure if she should keep going. The maitre d' moved to stop her. I lifted my hand again and he stepped aside at once. She walked toward me slowly. "I shouldn't be here," she said softly, "but I needed to see you." Her voice carried exhaustion, the kind that settles into the bones, the kind that comes from fighting alone for too long. "Sit," I said. She did, folding her hands in her lap. For a moment, neither of us spoke. She stared at the tablecloth like she was afraid of what she might see in my eyes. Then she looked up, and I felt something shift inside me. "My daughter is sleeping again," she said. "She smiles when she gets ready for school. She eats breakfast. She plays with her toys again. I haven't seen her do that in months." I said nothing. I didn't need to. She wasn't finished. "I read the newspaper," she whispered. "I know what happened to those men following the kids in our neighborhood. I know someone sent evidence. I know someone forced the system to finally care." Her eyes met mine, "And I know that someone was you." She wasn't wrong. I had sent the information. I had arranged the surveillance. I had built the case piece by piece until the district attorney couldn't ignore it. I had done everything the law should have done the first time Niran called for help. "I don't want to imagine what could have happened if you hadn't stepped in," she said. "I can't pay you back. I can't give you anything. But I needed you to hear me say thank you." She brushed her thumb over a small silver pendant she wore around her neck. A star. The one I'd left for her days earlier. Seeing it against her skin did something to me, something I wasn't prepared for. "Niran," I said, and my voice sounded different, lower, rougher. "You asked for nothing. Your daughter asked for everything. I just chose to listen." Her eyes softened, and for a moment, the restaurant felt too quiet, too intimate, too charged with something that wasn't fear. "Why did you help her?" she asked. I wasn't a man who opened up. My world didn't allow softness. But with her sitting across from me, waiting, I felt the walls I'd built around myself loosen. When I was her age, I said nobody listened to me either. Nobody cared. I learned early that fear was the only language anyone understood. Her expression changed, not with pity, but something warmer, something like understanding. "That's why you scare people," she said gently. "That's why people stay alive," I corrected. She gave a small, sad smile. "But you didn't scare her. You didn't use fear on her. You gave her something else." "What?" I asked. "Safety." The word hit so deep inside me I couldn't find my breath for a second. Safety. I had made a career out of danger, out of being the man everyone wanted to avoid. But now I was hearing from a woman who barely knew me that I had given her daughter the one thing nobody else could give. She stood, smoothing her dress with trembling hands. "I won't take more of your time," she said. "I just wanted you to know what you did changed her life." She turned to leave. Her steps were slow, hesitant, like she wanted to stay but didn't believe she had the right. I watched her walk across the floor, past the chandeliers and polished mirrors, past men who had spent their lives pretending to be important. Something in me refused to let her go like that. "Saren?" She stopped, turned, and when her eyes met mine again, something shifted between us, something warm, something dangerous. "Would you sit with me again?" I asked. Her breath caught. It wasn't a command. It wasn't business. It wasn't protection. It was a man asking a woman to stay. Yes, she said quietly, I would. And just like that, everything in my world began to change, not because of fear, not because of power, but because a little girl walked into my restaurant and trusted me with her whole life. That trust was turning into something else now, something I didn't know how to control, something I wasn't sure I wanted to control. I didn't expect Saren to return the next evening. I didn't expect her to walk into my restaurant wearing a soft blue dress and carrying the kind of nervous courage you can't fake. But she did. And when she saw me waiting for her at the corner table, something gentle lit up in her eyes. She took a seat across from me, folding her hands together. I could tell she felt out of place in a room filled with wealthy strangers and quiet power. But she was trying. She was fighting past her fear the same way her daughter fought past hers. "I don't know if I belong here," she whispered. "You do," I said. "You belong anywhere you walk into." Her cheeks warmed. She looked down, smiling in a way that made her look younger, softer, like a part of her had finally found space to breathe. We talked for an hour. Not about danger, not about fear. About small things. Normal things. She told me about the hospital, about the patients she tried to comfort even when she was exhausted. I told her about growing up in a neighborhood that taught me more about survival than kindness. It was strange, hearing myself speak so openly. I didn't tell stories. I didn't share memories. But with her it felt natural. Easy. Like she was someone I had known before life became complicated. At one point, she went quiet and looked at the river through the window. "I don't understand you," she said softly. "You're feared by everyone, but you protected my daughter like she was yours." Her words pierced the tough parts of me like a clean blade. Maybe because I wanted to protect something good for once. Maybe because seeing Aaliyah tremble in front of me had brought back pieces of my own childhood I thought I buried. Or maybe because sitting across from Saren felt like a door opening in a room I didn't know I wanted to enter. "Sometimes," I said, "the world breaks people for no reason. I break the ones who tried to break others." She lifted her eyes to mine. "And who breaks you?" The question hit deeper than it should have, but the way she asked it wasn't sharp or challenging. It was soft, curious, caring. "No one," I said. "Not anymore." She nodded, understanding that meant I'd carried pain alone for a long time. When the waiter brought her a plate, she stared at the food like she hadn't eaten a warm meal in weeks. Maybe she hadn't. I watched her relax with each bite, watched the tension leave her shoulders. It felt strange, the feeling blooming in my chest. I'd spent years keeping people at a distance. Now I found myself wanting this woman to stay until closing. After dinner, I walked her to the door. She paused, holding the silver star pendant between her fingers. "This was the first gift anyone's given me in a long time," she said. "It wasn't a gift," I said quietly. "It was a promise." Her breath caught at my words, and I knew she felt something shift too. I opened the door for her, but she didn't move. She looked up at me, her eyes full of the kind of trust most people never gave me. "Niran, I don't want this to be the last time I see you." "It won't be," I said. She hesitated only a second before stepping closer, close enough that I could feel the warmth of her breath. "I think you're a better man than you let the world believe," she whispered. I didn't answer. I couldn't. My chest tightened in a way I wasn't prepared for. But I reached up and touched her cheek, gently, afraid of breaking something too fragile. Her eyes closed at my touch. When she opened them again, something new was there. Something real. Something dangerous. She stepped out into the night, and I let her go only because I knew she would come back. And she did. The next morning, I parked a block away from the school. Not to interfere, not to watch. Just to make sure the world stayed quiet around the little girl who had walked into my life like a storm and changed everything in her path. Aaliyah stepped out of the school building at dismissal, holding hands with a new friend. She laughed, light and bright, and the sound carried across the yard like sunlight. Niran was waiting for her, her face soft with hope instead of fear. When she looked across the street and found my car, her lips curved into a small smile for me alone. I raised 2 fingers in a quiet greeting. She placed her hand over her heart. No words, no promises, just an understanding between 2 people who had lived too much pain but found something gentle in each other's presence. As they turned the corner, I leaned back in my seat and closed my eyes. For the first time in years, I felt something that wasn't darkness or danger. I felt peace. A 7-year-old girl had asked me to walk her to school so she could feel safe. And somehow, without meaning to, she walked me toward a life I never thought I could have.